What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Kyle of Brand of Sacrifice. Thank you so much for being here today, man. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, as we were talking about before, I saw you at Summer Slaughter 2019, and during the time when live music can't really happen right now, you look back at great performances, and you were definitely one of the opening bands that left a great memory for a lot of people. So it's great to finally chat with you.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. So Lifeblood is the new album coming out March 5th. Got a lot of questions about it. First and foremost, could the first couple of singles that you released, such as the title track and Animal, almost like serve as like a clear representation of what this album is going to sound like, or is that just like scratching the surface?
I think it's a pretty decent representation, but I think there's a lot more twists and turns that you can come to expect from us these days. We're trying to change things up a little bit, but still sort of have a more streamlined sound for maybe a wider audience that might want to get into some heavier music.
Mm-hmm. Do you think like this conceptually, like this is maybe kind of like the sequel or continuation of God Hand, or do you think that this is almost kind of like a new beginning for Brand of Sacrifice?
I think it is lyrically and musically a continuation of God Hand, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction and forward momentum as far as the sound goes. We really thought about our tool set and what was working, what wasn't in a live setting as well, and really doubled down on the things that we did think were working, and also focus a lot more on songwriting and structure overall in the music. And that's something that you'll find pretty consistently on the record overall. So
Was there kind of like a preconceived idea on how you wanted Lifeblood to sort of sound like? Was there kind of like a vision that you were following, or was there maybe like some experimentation or some trial and error?
I think we had a general idea of how we wanted it to sound, but then there was definitely that definitely was some experimentation overall in certain ways, certain riffs and certain mixing techniques and such. As far as the lyrics go, the concept was to write a record based on the perspective of Guts, who is the protagonist of the Berserk manga, which is primarily what we're themed around there. So that was already in my mind from the beginning, even before I started getting instrumentals to work with and start laying down the vocals. So.
Okay. Do you feel that like having sort of like a concept in mind and maybe a story in mind, obviously that influences the lyrics, but do you think that it can maybe also determine the music as well?
I don't think it does in our case. The reason being is that Leo, the guitar player and the writer, isn't too familiar with the Berserk manga as far as the storyline and such. So that's more on my end. So he has the musical sort of capabilities there, and he's the main writer. So that comes from his mind, and I'll sort of influence a few riffs here and there, or how the song should, what vibe the song might want to have, and things like that. But generally, that's Leo's standpoint, and then we put it all together in the end.
Okay. Does this story, is this kind of like maybe at all like do you feel like that this story is personally resonating with you? Is it almost kind of like serving as a metaphor for maybe like a personal experience for you? Or is like this just a story that you were very, very interested in and always wanted to write an album about?
I think that it's a combination of the two. So I think it's definitely a story of survival. In everyday life, we struggle with different things, whether you're dealing with things like depression or anxiety, or, a tough job or an exam. There's things that we got to get through and things that we got to struggle past and push through. I think we're all surviving day to day as humans. And it doesn't matter if you know the Berserk manga or if you're familiar with it. I think there's lyrics that you can resonate with from the record, based on that mindset and that theme.
Mm-hmm. And did the other albums, such as God Hand and the 2018 EP, like was there also kind of like an underlying concept as well, or is Lifeblood almost kind of like the first example of Brand of Sacrifice exploring a concept album?
I think Godhand was also a concept too, because it focuses primarily on the influence that the Godhand from the Berserk manga have on that world, and it's a darker and more bleak album comparatively. I'd say I think this one's a little more positive and lighthearted in some ways, while still being extremely heavy, of course. But I think there definitely was a theme on that, and the EP was already Berserk themed too, but it was more high level and it wasn't really structured the same way as these two are, the full length. So I think we've always had a concept in mind. It's just it's gotten a little bit more zoomed in, I guess you could say.
Do you feel like that Lifeblood is almost kind of like the sequel? And like, do you feel that like maybe if a listener really wanted to get a full understanding of the concept, your albums are kind of like Lord of the Rings, where like if they want to understand the full concept of Lifeblood, they have to start up with Godhand and they have to start off with the Interstice EP or something like that? Do they have to kind of like listen to the albums chronologically?
I think as far as the development of the band and musically, I'd say that might be an interesting choice. As far as the lyrics go, I never really had a huge. The first EP was written for fun and was never going to be anything more than that, actually. That was the plan. So the band was a side project at that time. We had another band called The Afterimage, which was our main project that we were focused on. And this was really something I just wanted to do for fun. One themed EP based off my favorite manga and call it quits. And then it ended up gaining more traction than our main project did, which was crazy to think about looking back now. But there was never really a huge mocked up plan that I had with the continuation of each album. It's just sort of going with the flow in some ways and having a basis for at least one album at a time and then going from there.
It's amazing on how like a band like turns out to be like a happy accident, if you will, or like you go into something with one expectation and it ends up completely, turning into something that you would never expect.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Now, in addition, for Lifeblood, you collaborated with a lot of great vocalists. I mean, just to name a few, you collaborated with Frankie from Amira, you collaborated with Ben from Shadow of Intent. Like, does like collaborating with different artists like maybe help you discover new things about your vocal style as well? Does that teach you new things or maybe broaden your horizons in a way?
I think the collaborations that we picked were all singers that were pretty different styles from me. As far as learning from others, I think I learned from Frankie growing up when I got into metalcore and heavy music in general. Like I listened to Goodbye to the Gallows when I was in high school, and I really wanted to imitate that particular sound. I could never figure it out how he gets sort of that resonance and wet sound that he does. And I remember listening to his raws when we received them. Like, wow, there's no effect on that. That's legitimately how his voice sounds with his high scream. So I think from the beginning I had that mindset. But as far as collaborations go, it was more I just really liked the sound of these vocalists in general, and I wanted them to be a contrast to my sound. And I picked sections of the album that I thought they would suit their vocal style specifically. So
do you feel like I like asking bands, because there's some bands that either collaborate a lot with artists or even some bands that have multiple vocalists, such as Despised Icon, for example, or We Came as Romans or Lacuna Coil. Like, do you feel like when you're collaborating with another musician that you almost kind of have to be in the same headspace or kind of like be in the same emotional state of mind in order to make the song relatively consistent?
I don't think you have to, and the reason being is because having a contrast in sound in some ways, as long as there's consistency in the words that are being said, is something that is really interesting to me. As far as being on the same mindset, I don't think some of these people that we've worked with for this record have any idea about Berserk. So I think they like the song and they like the vibe of the song and they could connect with that. And I think the music at that point was what they connected with. But I think the contrast is more important to me as far as that goes.
So you feel like with the Berserk, like it almost isn't like that you're trying to inform the listener or maybe engage the listener in the story. You feel that the music can be very much open to interpretation.
Yeah, for the most part. There's definitely some subjects that are pretty specific and names that are used and such that people might not fully understand. But I hope that leads to a Google search or talking with your friend about, hey, what's this? And then that can lead to discovering the manga and the beautiful masterpiece that it is. So I think I've heard that many times from a number of different fans that they got into the manga because they listened to us. So, and that's really important to me, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool because you don't want to be too like vague about your lyrics because people some do want to know like what is the meaning of the song, what was your headspace like, what were you trying to convey. So like I feel like when an artist says, "Oh, it's whatever you want it to be," like it's almost kind of like an excuse to not explain the lyrics, but at the same time you also don't want to be preachy and like force a message down people's throat.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's key. You should be able to have a general idea of what's being said for the most part, I think,
Yeah.
as far as lyrics go.
Yeah, and if a fan comes up to you and asks, like, what do the lyrics in this song mean, you wouldn't hesitate to explain
No, I
it.
would tell them. I would tell them, no problem.
Yeah. Do you almost feel like when you're recording the vocals or like when you are, even when you're playing live, even that like, that you maybe portray this character, that you become the berserk or you become what you sing about in a way? Or is it just mainly you like singing about it without necessarily changing who you personally are?
I definitely have a stage, not persona, but I have a stage version of myself that is a lot more extroverted than I am as a person when you just kind of have a one-on-one with me or hang out with me. Um, I wouldn't go as far to say that I'm some kind of warrior, but I think definitely there's more energy and aggression out of me on stage. So maybe you could connect it that way.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous saying, you are what you create. So.
That's true.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe you will become that individual. Can you honestly, maybe in the future, and obviously I'm asking this way too much, being that this album isn't even out yet, but like, do you think that, like, can you see Brand of Sacrifice in the future, maybe exploring different concepts or subject matters as well? Or do you kind of want to maybe stick with this theme for the entirety of your catalog?
I honestly think that we may move towards something a little more, I don't want to say general, but something that's not related to the manga and more related to personal circumstance, which is my old band was sort of based around that. It was just mostly my own stories. I'd like to go back to that in some degree, but whether or not the next singles or records or whatever it might be goes to that or not, that's to be determined at this point, I guess.
Yeah, and being that you played with many different bands before, is there kind of like, I know you explore different concepts and you explore different subject matters, but is there maybe something when you play with multiple bands that you kind of like maybe is there something that kind of ties the creative process all together with them, or is it always a completely separate mind frame?
So it's usually completely separate. We're generally, Leo does pretty select tours when we are touring. He's got another career that he's focused on as far as day jobs go, but he's generally off the road writing, and then he'll come in for certain tours that we do during the year. So he's sort of in a different mindset as far as that goes. We're not all writing together. It's usually just myself and Leo, and then we'll hand off the tracks to my drummer, and he'll do his thing. And this album is kind of cool because it's the first record where we used like actual real drums on it. So he's got a studio there. We tracked everything ourselves in our own separate studios and spaces. But as far as the mindset goes, I don't think touring has an influence as far as parts that we might want to contribute to the songs that we know will have a certain reaction, like whether it's a breakdown or a two-step or like a thrashy part. Those are things we keep in mind, but they're not so much the music of others isn't heavily it's not heavily influenced on our music there. I'd say stuff from the past would be more than our peers that we're playing with now.
Okay. In order to like get that creative energy to whether it's writing lyrics or performing or even just thinking of ideas, do ideas or inspiration sometimes come out of the blue, or do you almost kind of have to like be in a certain place or almost have like a usual go-to mode in order for the creativity to flow through?
For me, I think it's a combination of the two. Whether it's a hook, usually hooks come to me when I'm like out for a walk or I'm just doing something menial like cleaning or something like that. That's when a hook will come to me. But as far as formulating the song, I have sort of a weird process. I will write a few lines. I'll have an idea of what I want to talk about for the most part, and then I'll jump right into the DAW and start tracking the song as you hear it. So for multiple songs in the record, Lifeblood being one of them, I jumped into the DAW, started writing lyrics. I tracked them as I was writing them, so edited a few things here and there, and had the whole song done in a day while I was writing the lyrics, fully tracked. Mm-hmm. So that's how I do it sometimes. Sometimes I can't continue with the whole song. I'll get stuck. And I'll do like a minute of the song, and then I'll get stuck, come back to it like 3 months later and complete it from there. But it's a bit of a weird process.
I envy that you're able to do that, because don't you find like maybe like, and I don't know if this is even the goal for what you do as an artist, but like do you find it maybe like the longer you work on something, the harder it is to kind of like capture a moment and like maintain the emotional spark that initially inspired you?
There's that, and there's also making sure that your takes are consistent with the stuff you tracked months ago. Because some days, like, you'll find your voice is a little more gritty, or you'll find your voice a little more smooth. So then sometimes you gotta redo the beginning, or it's just different factors that come into it, even from the performance side as well. So
yeah, it's definitely a difficult. I've had a discussion with a couple of bands that like honestly putting a song down and coming back to it is almost kind of like a discipline in itself that you have to master.
Certainly, yeah. It's I know for our song Animal, actually, that one I wrote really early into the writing process. I wrote about a minute and 20 seconds of it or something, or 45 seconds even of it. And I got stuck at the point where the hook goes to the second half of it. And it was stuck like that for months. And I finished it towards the end of the writing process of the whole record, and it worked out great. But that one, it's funny because I think that's one of our strongest songs on the record, and it seems to be the one that is gaining the most traction. But that one was one of the most difficult to write, surprisingly, even though it's the most straightforward.
Yeah, that's usually the case. Like the song that people either dislike the most, or the song that was the biggest pain in the butt to write, or the song that like just needed to be on there for the sake of the requirement or whatever. That's usually the song that people gravitate towards. I mean,
it's
like
funny how that works.
Slash hates "Sweet Child O' Mine." He hates that song. So, and anybody who works in Guitar Center probably hates that song too. But like, but it's the biggest song of all time, so there's no escaping it.
That's right.
Yep. And the final question I wanted to ask you is the most difficult question of the interview. Are you ready?
All right.
How do you know when a song is done?
How do I know when a song is done? I'd say when it's mixed.
Oh, come on. We went so deep before.
Because, from my perspective, I would say it's something I just kind of know, because if there's anything in the song that takes away from immersion, then I know it's got to be fixed. So whether it's a mixing thing, or if it's a certain line that doesn't flow as well, or something like that. So I'd say the song is complete when you could be totally immersed in it.
Ooh,
whether that's the mix stage, whether it's the writing stage and you're in pre-pro, but if you can listen to the song fully through and not have anything that sort of bugs you or stands out to you as weird or doesn't feel quite right, that's when I think it's ready.
That was much better. And that actually is a good point, because like there's definitely a lot of songs. Like I feel like when you can indulge in a song and like get lost in it, that's when it like don't do anything else. If you add or take something away, it's just going to totally interrupt that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always said that a song is almost kind of like a cell, where if there's like one extra chromosome there or one chromosome missing, it could mess up the whole thing. So,
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
yeah, I was the biology nerd in high school. So, but before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this conversation, and you've been requested on this show a lot of times, so it's great to.
Oh, awesome.
Finally.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Is there just anything with the release of Lifeblood that you would like to promote? Obviously, thanks to the certain virus that shall not be named. Obviously shows aren't happening at the moment, but obviously, when this is over, we'll see you on the road quite a bit. Can we maybe be expecting like a live stream performance or some new merch that you would like to plug beforehand?
Actually, we just launched some new merch today.
Oh, wow.
We launched 2 new vinyl variants. One is called Candy Crush. It's a crazy lime green explosion of color. Then there's one that we called Literal Hell, as our friend in Nick Nocturnal made this joke on one of his reactions saying the song is Literal Hell. So it looks kind of like a pit of doom. It's kind of awesome. And we launched some hockey jerseys for those who are in colder areas like me in Toronto. They're blue and white after my favorite team, the Leafs. And we've got a couple other items as well. But that's that. And I also want to say that my friends in Signs of the Swarm put out an awesome song called The Collective the other day, which features the singer of Kublai Khan and as well there's another band, Depths of Hatred.
Oh, they're awesome.
From Montreal, who are our friends as well. They just put out a song today as well. So make sure you go check those guys out too.
That's cool that you plug other bands. And Signs of the Swarm is awesome too. I've been meaning to try to get them on here. I got to reach out to them. And
great guys.
Yep. And cool that you promoted. Just tell your hockey team to leave my Rangers alone, please.
All right.
But thank you so much, Kyle. Everybody, we are here with Kyle of Brand of Sacrifice on March 5th. Be sure to check out Lifeblood. You will not regret it. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.